Hey, everybody. Thanks for being here tonight for this month's Toolkit Tuesday. We're going to go ahead and get started, and I'm going to ask somebody to give us an opening prayer.
I'll do it.
Great.
Lord, thank you so much for the technology that we're able to share with your servants, and bless our meeting time tonight, that we use the time wisely, and that we can all learn how to protect the faithful that are going to our churches. We know, though, that you are the ultimate protector, and we leave our trust in you, that you would guide us and protect us. In your name we pray.
Amen.
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 Well, thanks, everybody, for being here. We are going to talk tonight just about emergency preparedness. I'm going to go over a roadmap. Some of you that have been with me from the beginning probably saw this, so it might be a good refresher. Our objective for 2024's cohort is to get everybody kind of on the same page, headed toward the conference, going over some of the same topics we did last year with some tweaks. Some of the folks who have been with us for a while, like I said, this will be a refresher, but I think there are things to learn every time because so much is changing every time. I mean, just what's happened in Joel Osteen's church in the last couple of weeks. Just one of the things to hit the news, but things are happening every day. And so when I talk to Tim Miller and other of us who do this work, the things we talk about now and the threats we talk about now and the challenges we talk about now are different than 6 months ago and then different than a year ago. So we want to stay engaged in the conversation and keep moving it forward. So we do want to grow the community. So if you know folks from other churches that need to be involved and need to hear this information, please send them our way. And we'll just keep promoting it as we go. So I have a PowerPoint presentation I'm going to share. We can talk through. I think by now you guys know I'm kind of informal. So if once I start the PowerPoint, I won't be able to see you. So just tell me, one, if you can see the PowerPoint, and two, just stop me at any point if you have questions. How many of you have seen the Run, Hide, Fight video?
Yes.
I think so. A while back.
A while ago. Okay.
Not.
So, have you seen it, Sally?
I don't think so.
Okay. Bob?
I'm muted. I will be.
Have you seen the Run, Hide, Fight video?
You know
No.
what? Take that back. I have seen that.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's part of the presentation. Like I said, it's going to be a refresher, but we'll watch it again. We'll talk through some of the points from it. Again, this is being recorded, so I like people to go and watch it in playback, which oftentimes if people can't make it tonight, they'll go and pick it up. So I do want to play it. So we're going to go through the presentation here in 1 second. Get to the beginning of this. Okay, can you see my screen?
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, great. Move some things around so I can see. All right, so I wanted to start off with what I call our roadmap for emergency response. It kind of starts with, what do you do first? I get asked that so many times. Okay, great. Well, that's great, Angela. We're going to build a plan. What are we going to do first? So your most important thing is the actual plan. You'll hear in the video, they give some statistics. Pay attention, listen for it. How many folks avoid catastrophe or survive major issues literally by having a plan. So it's almost like what I call muscle memory, because the more you plan, the more you drill, the more you discuss, the more people remember it, right? And so this is not ever to be scary or to create fear for people. It is just to normalize the conversation that if this happens, this is what we do. If this happens, this is what we do. I always preface that conversation by saying, no matter what we plan and or drill, may or may not be the thing that happens, but
Correct.
it raises your consciousness about what could be happening. Okay, does that make sense?
Absolutely.
So on the road, we always start with beginning with your most vulnerable population. So if I come to visit your church, the first thing I want to see is, where are your kids? Is there a specific place where people who are physically challenged sit? Like some churches have a place where wheelchairs are or walkers are. Where are those people? Elderly are usually kind of scattered throughout, but do they have walking apparatuses? Do they have canes? Do they have walkers? Those are things that people who are your ushers, greeters, auditorium folks need to know. Because if you need to evacuate, they need to know where those people are. So when I used to go through the auditorium before the service, that's the other thing, is trying to make a point of walking your facility before the service and taking a look and seeing if you see these things. One, you don't want them in the aisle. And two, you want your greeters, hosts, ushers that are closest to those folks to know that they are there, right? You want them to know, okay, Sally is sitting here and she has a walker. We're not going to take Sally's walker, but that person who's going to be responsible for evacuation needs to know it's there. Okay. Particularly if it's in an aisle or close to an aisle. Now, if it's a wheelchair, we did take the wheelchairs and we put them away in the back. Again, that usher, greeter, floor host, whatever you call them in your church, needs to know where they are and to go get them in the event that we have to do an evacuation. So thinking about your vulnerable population first is very important. Knowing where they sit typically is very important. Having rescue areas in your church are very important. This is, again, going back to having conversations with your first responders, having your first responders visit your church. If you have folks who have physical handicaps and you are not capable of moving them out in a fire, where is the rescue area? Where do we take them to, park them, and let people know that they are there for them to be retrieved by first responders? Okay. So I want you thinking always first about your most vulnerable population. When you talk about kids, you want to think about birth to like 4th grade. That's the typical ages where you got to get kids in a lockdown scenario. Newborns to like 4th grade. 4th grade and up, they're going to run. You're not going to get a toddler to run, not in a straight line, not out a door. Here's the other thing. Post-COVID, a lot of classrooms now, because so many people did not come back to traditional church, a lot of classrooms are mixed ages. So it used to be like birth to 1st grade, and then 2nd grade and 3rd grade, and then 4th grade, 5th grade. It's not like that anymore. As I visit a lot of churches, there's a lot of kids in one room of varying ages, just because they don't have, one, enough kids, or two, enough volunteers to have them spread out in different rooms. Let's slide over here and try to fix my lighting for a second. I'm not sure I can, but let's see. Well, that's not helpful. I'm not sure what's happening. It's coming and going. So we'll see if we can figure it out in a second. Maybe I need to turn on the overhead light. So that's kind of one of the things to think about. When you have a room full of mixed age children, what do you think is the best thing to do in that scenario? Let's say you got kids who are toddlers and kids who could run because they're fourth grade. What would you do in that scenario? Anybody? You're all on mute, so anybody can unmute themselves and tell me.
Well, my first guess would be lockdown.
Why?
Because the older ones could take care of the little ones, because the little ones will get left behind.
Yes,
Um,
that's the right answer. And the answer is you defer to the youngest person in the room. In a kid scenario, you defer to the youngest person in the room. So if the youngest kid in the room is fourth grade and they can run, you want them to go out of the building. If the youngest kid in the room is a toddler, then you got to go into lockdown. And that's everybody in the room defers to the youngest person in the room. Does that make sense? So then the next thing on your roadmap is where do you go? It doesn't help that I turn that over. So the next thing is where are you going? This is all the conversation that I keep talking about, identifying mutual aid partners. My favorite mutual aid partners are schools. Because why? Anybody know why?
They probably have the best protection in place.
Well, they're not there on Sundays either.
That's the answer.
Ah,
So the best partner for a church, in my opinion, is a school. They're not there on the weekends, and churches are quiet during the week. So when you say mutual aid partner, it's a mutual
mhm.
partnership, meaning if they have a problem on a weekday, they want to come to your building. If you have a problem on the weekend, you want to go to their building. I remember when I first started this process of trying to identify mutual aid partners, just because of the size and scope of Willow, I was looking for something as large. Now remember, this is pre-pandemic. And so I looked at movie theaters, that's right close to that campus. I looked at Sears Center, I think it's called the Now Center now. That was close to our building. All of those things still have events on Sundays. So it doesn't make sense as we walked it out. So you want to look for partners near your facility that don't have Sunday activities, that you could go there. Now, the biggest thing to figure out in those scenarios, once you identify those partners, is how do you get a hold of them on the weekend? Who's their contact person? How long will it take them to open the building? Do they have buses to move your kids? Like there's a whole lot of pieces involved. But first you have to identify who they are. That's the first piece. Okay? So where will you go? Then the next piece is the lockdown strategy. Where do you go in an emergency in your building? If you cannot run, where in your building are you going to go? And are those areas what we call hardened? Because if you're all running in a closet that's just drywall, that's not going to help anybody. It's not going to help anybody. So those are spaces to look at, particularly for kids. How do we harden those spaces so that they are less vulnerable in their hiding space? The other thing to think through, particularly for younger kids, is what's happening in the rooms. So inside the rooms, they're in lockdown. Depending on the size of your facility, you're there for quite a long time. So inside that room, are there diapers? Are there toys? Is there shelf-stable juice? Are there crackers? Like what's in that room that they have, because they're going to be in lockdown for hours, potentially. So think about your kids, your grandkids, small kids. What do they need? Are there toys in there? Is there an iPad in there? I also recommend putting white noise in those rooms so that the teachers, if they are in lockdown, they can turn on the white noise machines and the kids can't hear everything that's happening outside the room, just to avoid trauma or try to minimize trauma, if that makes any sense. How do you,
totally.
yeah. I talked about mutual aid partners already. And then the other piece is who's on your team. So having a crisis management team, your crisis management team and crisis management roles are different than your roles during a regular course of service or your regular course of business. It's not the same. You'll see what I mean when we get to that page, because I have a page in here about teams. Identifying who's going to be on your team and who's going to own what is important to identify early on in your planning process. Any questions on that one before I leave them?
No,
So then this just talks about risk management and safety in general for the church. I've had a lot of conversations with people and we talk about all kinds of things like, should our security teams conceal carry? Should they not conceal carry? Who's doing what? So I always try to come back to a risk management focused approach about how do we identify, analyze, control, transfer, like where's risk for the church? Because all these things are risky. So I call this a risk management approach. So these are conversations to have with your attorneys and conversations to have with your insurance companies. Different attorneys have a different take. Different insurance companies have a different take. I've probably been talking to attorneys and insurance companies about this for the last 6 or 7 years. I don't think I've ever gotten the same answer twice.
wow.
So you need to talk to your insurance company and you need to talk to your attorney, because that means they're going to cover whatever they cover and they're going to defend whatever they defend. You see what I'm saying? So so far, there's no universal, like, this is what should happen. So just make sure you're covering your facility by having a conversation with your provider. That's as far as I can take you on that, because like I said, as many times as I've had these conversations, I probably have as many different answers about what's allowable and not. Okay? But please do yourself a favor and have the conversation, because that's really important, that you know what they will cover, what they won't cover, what they will defend, what they won't defend. Okay? So just make sure you do that. So whose job is it to manage safety?
The team,
Whose is
The-
it?
it's a team effort, really.
It's everybody's job. Literally, it's everybody's job. This is where it gets tricky. I was having this conversation with somebody a couple weeks ago. You're never an expert at your own house. Never. So you could talk to your teams until you're blue in the face. The minute somebody from outside comes, they're going to go, yeah, that's a good idea. And it's going to make you mad. You're going to want to choke them, right? It's like talking to your kids. You tell your kids, I talk to my son, I tell him the same thing. 3 times I told him. And then he calls me and goes, Mom, guess what I just learned? And I go, oh, really? Sounds familiar, right? I don't know why. I think it's just human behavior. I don't get it, but that's the way it is. So it's important to have someone have that conversation with your teams about the fact that it's everybody's job. Everybody has to own safety, and they have to own it for their teams in their areas where they are. So if you have a team that cleans the church, that is their job. Let me talk about cleaning for a second, why I picked that one out. I didn't pick it out on purpose, but it just hit me. What we did and what I think is important is to identify a cleaning company that if you had a major event at your church, who's coming to clean it? If you have people who typically clean your church, who are members of your church, they cannot clean up after a major event. You will never get them back to church. So if you have a cleaning team that is a member of your church, that is not who is cleaning up after a major event. So,
I'm sorry, Angelia, could I just clarify major event?
yep,
I mean, major event, does that mean like Christmas services or concerts, or does major event mean an
Trauma.
emergency?
trauma.
Yeah, okay,
an emergency
I-
event. So
I just wanted to clarify that.
yeah, even a tragic fire, right? So you know you're going to get people who come in and clean up and board up and do all that. But particularly if you have an active shooter event at your campus, those people cannot be involved in anything to do with the cleaning. If they are members of your church, you'll never get them back in that building. And typically what happens is in an event like that, the first responders are going to take over and everybody's going to leave anyway, but that's not something they can re-enter into. And so when we used to talk about this at Willow, we had at one point, a very large campus teams, and the conversation was around cleaning after. It can't be done. So we identified a cleaning service and just said, hey, if we ever have a major incident at our campuses, we will be calling, they were our person to call. Okay. I'm sorry, did somebody have something? I got somebody.
Angelia, the cleaning company, was it a company that specialized in that type of thing or just any cleaning company?
No,
They-
they have a component around cleaning for disaster cleaning.
Well.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Maybe you could send out some links if it's more of like a national company or
Yeah,
a lead there.
I can find it. I'll dig it out and I'll drop it on the site.
Yeah, thank you.
Mm-hmm. So we'll talk about this when we have conversations, we talk about it with staff, key volunteers. This is why when I talked about maybe a month or so ago, when we talked about safety teams, those safety teams, in my opinion, need to be comprised of somebody from each of your ministries so that they are your ambassador and they take it back and they talk to their teams about it. So now it's in the water, right? That's what we need. We need people from every ministry to be engaged in the safety team, not the safety team going to that ministry to say, hey, this is how we're going to do it. It's the
So,
people.
I'm sorry.
Go
So
ahead.
that's where you're differentiating between a security team and a safety team. Is that correct?
Yeah, so if you're going to have a safety team, I personally don't care for safety teams because I feel like then everybody looks at them and go, oh, they got it covered, right? No, they don't have it covered. We all have it covered. We all have to have it covered. So if there's a children's ministry pastor, a youth pastor, someone that runs your cafe, every ministry needs to be represented on the safety team so that as we're learning and growing in this space, they're taking it back to their team to say, hey guys, this is what we're going to do in kids ministry. Here's what we're going to do at the cafe. Here's what we're going to do on the production team or sound or right. So if there's a meeting of the minds of the safety team, then there needs to be a representative from every ministry on that team so that they're taking what you're giving them back to their teams and they're owning. Yeah, it's almost like puzzle pieces, right? Now
Yeah.
you're not going around team to team to figure out what's doing what. Everybody's doing the same thing because they all took what you gave them and took it back to their individual teams.
Yeah.
Yeah. That makes sense?
It does. It's definitely something, that we've chatted about before. I'm still trying to wrap my head around
Yeah.
how we configure all that, but we will.
Yeah. It'll get easier.
And I'm thinking out loud about maybe not having a person from each ministry actually on the team, but maybe a periodic meeting where they come in and we kind of discuss mutual problems that they would how they would be involved in a certain type of situation, but not necessarily formally on the team to come to every meeting and that. I don't know.
So I'll tell you how I do it. So the way I do it is the first thing I do is train the staff because the staff has to be on board. They have to own it, right? So the first thing I do is train the staff. And then I get feedback from the staff to say, is this what we're doing? Is this how we're gonna do it? Do you have anything to add? Are we missing anything? Staff gives their feedback. I gotta go turn this overhead light on. This lighting's driving me crazy. Give me a second. If I can find it. Jeez, is that any better? I think so. Is that better or no? Yes. Once we've had the conversation with staff, then I go to key volunteers. Who are your key volunteers, your leaders in every ministry? As many ministries as we can get in the room to have the conversation, because we don't have safety teams. We never had safety teams. It was ministry by ministry by ministry.
Right.
So then once we met with all the leaders, then those leaders and us as the safety leaders would then go meet with their volunteers. So then me and that leader would go meet with all the volunteers in production. Me and that leader would go meet with all the volunteers in children's ministry. Me and that leader would go meet with all the volunteers on the cleaning team. So that in our, I don't have this stuff here. In our ERP, every section of it belonged to a ministry. There's a children's section in the ERP that is theirs. So they get 4 or 5 pages from the ERP that belongs to them. This is what you're gonna do: medical, weather, fire, evacuation, meaning bomb threat or armed intruder, right? And so that ministry then knew exactly what they were gonna do. And if they had questions, then they would come back and say, oh, this has changed, or we need help with this. So like production team, one night security was running a drill, and they were utilizing the production team to say, oh, turn the music on. Let's see how it sounds in here. And what happens if we're chasing the bad guy and blah, blah, blah. And they had not prepared production. So production then got really nervous and was like, what do we do? So then we developed the production piece to say, here's what you do if there's an emergency. Here's how you assist with getting that pastor off the stage. Who from the security team is taking the pastor? Who from the security team knows where his family is and how you're going to reunite them? Because he's limpid in that moment to pastor anybody if he doesn't know where his family is, where his wife and kids are. Production teams, how do they get off the stage if it's an active shooter? What if it's a heckler? What if it's just somebody who's protesting? You know, we have blinds. So blinds up, music up, lights up, people up, right? So that the security team can then deal with that person. So there's unique safety components to every ministry. So we would spend the time with each ministry to say, here's what you're going to do for your ministry. So staff first, key volunteers from every ministry, and then me and that ministry leader with their volunteers. That's how we did it. Yep, Connie?
Yeah, so, yes, Angelia, that is how we did it. So at some point, there's been a lot of conversation I'm hearing on Church Safety Toolkit and Toolkit Tuesday about safety team, safety team, safety team. Every staff member and every volunteer, no matter what level volunteer, are the safety team. You don't need special members, special members of a safety team. Everybody's part of the safety team because of what Angelia just said, because everybody has a responsibility. So I know we went to the children's ministry and we trained them, and just everybody. We went to the ushers is what I worked with all the time. We had ongoing training before every service. We would get together for a pre-service meeting, and we would show one of the safety moments. It's a 60 to 90 second refresher as to what to do and how to keep the church safe.
Yeah,
But
because
anyway.
in a real emergency, people are gonna do one or two things. They're gonna rise to the occasion, or they're
Right.
gonna fall to their training. It's only
Right.
one or two things that's gonna happen. So if they haven't had the training, and I mean consistently, it can't be once a quarter, can't be 2 times a year. That safety moment got talked about every week before every service, every conference, before every event. We had a safety moment. So I feel like by the time we had finished devising the plan and working the plan and drilling the plan and training the plan, I could wake those people up at 3 in the morning. They could tell me how to get out of their section of the building. And what's really important is for them to know again, it's puzzle pieces. Do your section. You can't worry about what's going on at the door down the hall. Like if everybody is doing their part, if children's is doing theirs, production is doing theirs, the worship center is doing theirs, then everybody gets out because everybody's working in tandem in their own space. Does that make sense? I hope
I know in the section that I worked in, just as a side note, one of the ushers, if you will, one of the aisle hosts had to go out a side door, unlock a gate so that people could escape that way in the case of a fire drill or, armed intruder or whatever. And it was just, but we were the only section that had to have somebody go out and unlock the gate.
Yeah.
So you go section by section of your church, you go classroom by classroom in your children's ministry through high school ministry. And what does every single volunteer in that space need to know and need to do for safety?
And I'll tell you, it also is a morale booster for your volunteers. Because
Absolutely.
whether or not you ever talk about this stuff, people are thinking about it. When they drive onto your campuses, they are thinking about the safety of them and their kids. And so it's really important that they understand what it is that they have to do. So yeah, and so we would do the huddles, and that's when we would do the safety moment, either live or video. Some of the videos are on the website. We're going to be producing some more. And then when those ushers, greeters, hosts, whatever you call them, we call them guest experience team, left and broke off into those individual sections and went inside the auditorium, they would stop. There was underneath the seats, kind of where seats are in the back of your auditoriums, depending on how you're set up, there was cards in there. And on one side of the card was, how do you get out of here in a fire? And the other side was, what do we do for weather? And if there was an evacuation, instead of disturbing the service, making all this noise, we would pull the cards out and hand them to them, one side up or the other. If I hand it to you weather side up, that means prepare your team for a weather evacuation. If I hand it to you fire side up, we're checking to see it may be a potential fire, start preparing your team for a fire evacuation. And there was no conversation, like we didn't talk, we just passed each other the cards, and then they knew what to do, but that's based on the training. And so you don't lose control of the room. Otherwise, it is potential chaos. All right, anything else on this, or I'm going to go to the next one? All right. So this is crisis management. I was talking a little bit about the crisis management team. What's their role? Developing and implementing safety protocols, including now infectious disease. We didn't think as much about that before the pandemic, but it needs to be part of your plan. Provide safe worship environment for your staff and your congregants. Safe workplace for staff and volunteer spaces for staffs and volunteers. Deliver safety compliance training, which is what we just talked about. Develop and implement your evacuation strategies for your congregants and particularly our vulnerable populations. Building a community with those mutual aid partners, getting them in the building, giving the cops some coffee and donuts, they'll come. As long as you feed them, they'll come. Develop and implement an incident command structure. You'll see that in a minute. And then if your church has more than 10 employees, they have to comply with OSHA and other regulatory agencies. I tell people this all the time. They don't believe it's a thing because it's a church. If you have more than 10 employees, you have to. There are also new insurance requirements. They are now asking for a copy of your ERP when they rewrite your insurance policies. What's your emergency response plan? What's my risk if I insure you? That kind of thing. So that's what the role of that of the crisis manager is. This was just something I developed. It's an example. It can be used for any kind of emergency notification, but I picked COVID because it was such a thing. But as sure as we sit here, there'll be another thing, right? And so, like, how do you just make sure there's a component in your plan for infectious disease if we ever unfortunately have to go through that again? This is what I call safety at a glance. We would use this a lot, but these are just like the 4 pillars of safety: medical, fire, weather, armed intruder. And again, this was built for our guest experience teams. What do you do for either one of these pillars? So I think you guys have this and you can customize it however you need it to be for your organization. Communication is big. The biggest thing is that it's plain, concise, normal conversation. I don't need echo, bravo, foxtrot. Yeah, not any of that. So just plain, concise communication. If you are using radios, and everybody should be using radios, that is part of the radio protocol that we can either show you how to develop, help you develop, or enhance if you're doing it already, and what people should and should not be saying on the radios. I think I told you guys the gun story. Everybody know my crazy gun story? Anybody not hear it? No. So we're at service, and we get the call on the radio that says, there's a lady here, she has her kids, and can somebody come over here? Her husband's not supposed to be here, and he has a gun. So everybody's running in the direction to go to where the call is coming from. I tell everybody, I'm not a runner. If you see me running, you should join me. That's all I'm saying, because something is really happening if I'm running. I'm running in heels, running. We get to the other side, and what the call should have been was, there's a lady here who has her like divorce paperwork. Her husband is not supposed to be on campus the same time as her and the kids, and he carries a gun. Is that the same call? That is not the same call. So here I am, winded, about to pass out. Like, really? This was the call? This was the call? So it has to be plain, concise conversation. We have to normalize the conversation. We have to tell people to tell us on the radio what's important. Tell us on the channel without, and he did it. The guy did it on the live channel with like 30 other people on the channel. It was a bad night. So yeah, radio protocol is a big deal. So we'll have to talk about that. If you guys have questions about that, I can help you. And setting up an emergency channel. And then if you're using our templates, you'll see in there certain ministries have certain channels. There should certainly be radios in the kids' rooms, but separating the channels out. And whoever is on your emergency team, if you keep your safety team, whoever's on that team that's going to perform or carry out the plans in an emergency should have an emergency channel. So all this chatter isn't going on so that everybody can hear it. You need to deviate to a channel that's an emergency channel. But that's something we can help with. People choose where they live, shop, and worship based on how safe they feel. When I first started all this conversation at Willow, everybody was scared that there was going to be a lot of pushback. What I got was a lot of, thank you so much for thinking of this. I think of this every time I drive on this campus. Thank you for talking about it. Thank you. So I know it seems challenging and thankless to start all of this. People don't want to listen. People don't want to change. Ultimately, people will be grateful for the work you're doing. So please know this work is valuable that you're doing in your churches. And they will be grateful for it once it's in place. I think families will be grateful to know that there is a plan. That's very important.
And it all goes back to just normalizing that conversation.
Mhm.
And you've heard us say this repeatedly. The kids will lead the way in this.
They will, yeah.
The kids, any child over the age of 5
Yeah. in
has
school.
been
Yeah.
has been drilled fire, armed intruder, weather, evacuation, what to do, how do you protect yourself. Every child, and I am quite sure that the kids are wondering, what should I do here if there's a fire? Where would I go? So the kids, this is not going to be scary for the children at
Not at
all.
all.
No,
The hardest
Because-
part is going to be the infant parent to the school age parent.
Right.
Even the school age parent will not be as, I mean, they'll be nervous, of course, but they won't be as terrified because their kids are doing it all the time in school. Now, communicating with them early is going to be important to say, here's what we'll do in a fire, weather, or an evacuation.
And I have to wonder if it is communicated with the parents, Angelia, because we talk a lot about the parents are going to want to get to their child.
They are, yeah.
But if it is communicated to the parents that the volunteers are trained to keep the kids safe.
Yeah.
If that
I mean,
becomes
it will
part
be,
of
it will be chaos, but what has to be communicated, Connie, is the volunteers have been trained. They know what to do.
Correct.
Your kids
Correct.
are being handled in a safe manner.
correct,
Either they have left the building or they are in a lockdown scenario.
correct,
And we will not compromise a room of 10 kids to open the door for you.
correct,
Because I don't know that the government doesn't have you hostage and getting you to open the door because I know you, right? So there's no way I'm going to now put 9 other kids at risk to open the door so you could take Johnny. That's not going to happen. So once we're in lockdown, we're in lockdown. That's it. And so I think that's going to be very difficult for parents to hear and process. But I think that has to be the only choice. And I think it has to be communicated. I think it has to be communicated early. This is how this will work in this scenario.
yeah, my daughter, I think I told you once before, my daughter is a kindergarten teacher. And so the parents know that she's going to be doing drills because she has her own bathroom in her classroom.
Mhm.
And that's where the kids go. That's where they all go. And I mean, it's like smushing sardines in a bathroom. And so one girl freaked out and said, Mrs. Derry smushed me in the bathroom and I couldn't breathe. And then that mom totally freaked out. But she was the only parent that freaked out. And I think that that's kind of a good thing. But yeah, the parents are learning early to not freak out
Yeah.
at kindergarten age. So
Yeah. Yeah, I think for children's ministry, it'd be great if you could make a communication packet. If they're normally getting emails, maybe put it in the email. Or if for sure new families, this is what we do on our campus for fire, weather, medical, evacuation, sanitation, right? Like put it all in there. This is what we do. And they get that when they check their kids in for the first time. If they're already there, they get an email that says, hey, here's our new safety protocols. Here's what we do. Volunteers have been trained. If you have questions, come see us. Yeah. So this is fire drills. Now, the one thing I have not figured out, and Gary did, actually, Gary's church did, Gary and Mary, figured out how to do fire drills with their congregation. And I thought it went really well. So I think that it's possible. There's always the tension of people are going to be scared. But the way they did it is they asked people to volunteer. Hey, we want to do some drills after church. would anybody like to stay and help us? And quite a few people stayed. And they ran a fire drill. I thought it went great. I thought it went great. So it's definitely an option. So what do you do? Where do you rally? What's the observations? And then the debrief. But I thought it went great. So that's definitely one to consider. But for sure, you should be doing it with your safety ambassadors and with teachers and volunteers. Another big one is equipping people who are in the buildings, not on Sundays. So if you're having classes during the week, people are utilizing the building during the week who aren't staff, who aren't key volunteers. They just come in and run a mom's Bible study once a week on Wednesday night or whatever the issue is. Those people need to know how to get out of the building. Do you guys have something posted in each room, like maps? Do you tell them when they reserve that room, here's our safety protocols? Who do they call if something happens and there's no staff person in the church that night? There's kind of a phone tree on this other document I'll show you. But yeah, equipping them for when nobody that's normally there is important. This is the Run, Hide, Fight video. So we're gonna show it and then we'll come back and talk about it. There's some things in there that I always like to point out. So let me know if you can hear it. And it's about 5 minutes. Can you hear it? Can't hear it?
It may feel like just another day at the office, but occasionally life feels more like an action movie
Can't hear it at all?
I can hear it.
Oh, you can. Oh, okay.
than reality. The authorities are working hard to protect you and to protect our public spaces. But sometimes bad people do bad things. Their motivations are different. The warning signs may vary, but the devastating effects are the same. And unfortunately, you need to be prepared for the worst. If you were ever to find yourself in the middle of an active shooter event, your survival may depend on whether or not you have a plan. The plan doesn't have to be complicated. There are 3 things you could do that make a difference: run, hide, fight. First and foremost, if you can get out, do. Always try and escape or evacuate, even when others insist on staying. Encourage others to leave with you, but don't let them slow you down with indecision. Remember what's important: you, not your stuff. Leave your belongings behind and try to find a way to get out safely. Trying to get yourself out of harm's way needs to be your #1 priority. Once you are out of the line of fire, try to prevent others from walking into the danger zone and call 911. If you can't get out safely, you need to find a place to hide. Act quickly and quietly. Try to secure your hiding place the best you can. Turn out lights, and if possible, remember to lock doors. Silence your ringer and vibration mode on your cell phone. And if you can't find a safe room or closet, try to conceal yourself behind large objects that may protect you. Do your best to remain quiet and calm. As a last resort, if your life is at risk, whether you are alone or working together as a group, fight. Act with aggression. Improvise weapons. Disarm him. And commit to taking the shooter down, no matter what. Try to be aware of your environment. Always have an exit plan. Know that in an incident like this, victims are generally chosen randomly. The event is unpredictable and may evolve quickly. The first responders on the scene are not there to evacuate or tend to the injured. They are well trained and are there to stop the shooter. Your actions can make a difference for your safety and survival. Be aware and be prepared. And if you find yourself facing an active shooter, there are 3 key things you need to remember to survive. Run, hide, fight.
So in the very beginning of that video, who was the first person that got shot?
Security guard.
Why do you think?
He's the one that probably has a gun.
What happened?
He's the one that probably has a gun. I mean, if anybody would have one, he would have one, maybe.
Right. But I think it's because he's identifiable. He
Yes.
had on a security uniform. This is why I don't like security uniforms. Some people like to put their security people in shirts and say security on them and jackets, and I think it's a bad idea. As much as you can give anonymity to your security folks, the better. That's a big one for me. Did anybody hear them say survival depends on? Anybody remember? Your survival greatly depends on what? Having a plan.
Convicted. Okay.
Having a plan. Plan doesn't have to be elaborate, doesn't have to be huge, doesn't have to be extensive, but you gotta have a plan. And the one thing that when we get into training teams, that'll be very difficult for people is don't let people slow you down. You have to run. You got to tell people as you're going, but you have to go. And that's so hard in the church because all of us are built from the stay, assist, help. But as you're going, you have to tell people as you're going, but you have to go. Like you can't stay. That's the thing. That's the toughest one for us to get people to think through. This is the incident command sheet. It is on our website. I think if you came to the conference, you have it in your binder. You need to figure out who belongs in those boxes. This is where I talk about the roles are different than your regular roles at church. Who's your facilities officer?
Mark? I mean,
I'm like, what happened? Yeah, who's your facilities officer? Who is your public information officer? This one's really important. If you go back to the recent Joel Osteen shooting, he got in front of the camera. He should not have been the spokesperson for that event. He should not have been the person in front of the camera. So who is your public information officer? Who's going to talk to the media? Because if something's happening, even if it's a tornado, the media is coming to cover it, right? Who is in front of that camera? What are they going to say? Where are you going to stage the media? On your campus, on your property? Can they come all the way up to the door and take a microphone and stick in the face of congregants as they're walking out? Do you want them out on the sidewalk on public property? Those are all things you have to decide. Take it from me, you do not want them close to your door. You want them as far away as you can have them, preferably with some buffer as to how much access they can have. It's not a good thing. Who's your legal officer? Who's pastoral care? I talk about the fact that your pastor is limpid in the moment to pastor you. Who is pastoring you? We have a relationship with Salvation Army, which is why we had our conference at their facility last year. We will again this year. Salvation Army has chaplains who will come and be with you in that moment. They will come and be with your congregation until your pastor can step back into that role. They will also come and be with you if you have a victim and assistance center and are doing reunification, and they will help deliver difficult news. They have chaplains who are there with you. So who's your pastoral care in the case of an emergency? Again, it could be a tornado. It could be a major fire. If you have to go off-site to a victim assistance center, they are a huge asset to have with you. Okay? So that's where's your emergency channel? That's the one thing. Where are you rallying inside? Where are you rallying outside? That's what's in that box at the top. Those are all things you need to train folks on. Who's your facilities liaison manager? Who knows all about your facility? If you have kids ministry, that means you probably have compressed air for balloons and you have chemicals somewhere. If you're having a fire or an explosion or a bomb threat, they're going to want to know where that stuff is when they show up. Who can tell them? Oh, it's locked in a fire cabinet in our basement. It's locked in it, right? Where's that stuff? Who knows that? That's who should be running your facilities liaison piece. Q&A. That's all I got.
It was a lot.
That was a lot? Who said that?
It was a lot. Yeah. Yeah. You covered a lot in that short amount.
Who said that?
Sally said that.
Oh, that's Sally.
Well, even though we've heard some of this before, every time you present this, I always pick up one or two pearls or something that we need to look into further. So thank you.
Yeah, it's never ending. That's the thing. And I'm so grateful for you guys who are using the information. I can't tell you how many times I've done this, and I've had to pull the senior pastor to the side to say, listen, you came for free, and then you brought me in and you paid us as consultants, and then I come back and it's just sitting on your shelf. That pains me, right? If you're if you're a corporation and I come and do a consulting job with you and you never use it, I go, they didn't use it, right? They didn't think it was great. If you're a church and these are somebody's tithe dollars, it is really hard for me to watch people do nothing with the information. So I'm really grateful for all of you who are saying, we just keep kicking the can down the road and getting better. I really am grateful for you. It's really important. Gary, I think you could teach the next.
Oh, I don't know. I mean, well, the one thing I would say is, the hardest part is starting,
Yes,
and
Mhm.
and you don't have to be overwhelmed and think you have to do all this stuff all at once. And so just start slow, do a little thing here, a little thing there, and gradually build on it. And that's, and then after a certain while, you look back and you see that you have come a long way. You have
yeah,
done a lot more than you had nothing before.
right.
So
And the thing is, it's never over. It's like
yeah,
exercising, right? Like we can never be done with it.
yeah,
You
yeah,
just keep trying to get better at it.
right,
There's no
right,
such thing as done. You're never done
right.
because
Yeah,
Never.
the dynamics change and things
good
change.
point.
Yeah,
Good point. Yeah.
yeah.
Hmm.
Yes, Bob.
Nothing to say.
Oh,
Oh,
you unmuted yourself. I was waiting.
I know. I'm loving every minute of this. It is a little overwhelming. And I used to attend Willow. I know you guys are totally organized with this, so it's awesome. We appreciate you helping us out.
Absolutely.
Angela, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, all I was gonna say is that I've been in and out on attending these for the past, has it been almost a year?
Almost 2 years.
Almost two, oh my gosh, okay. The way that you do this of building over the course of time, developing a really huge piece of work without, as what I think it was Bob said, without it being overwhelming. How to eat an elephant one bite at a time.
Yeah.
The way you're doing this is really helpful.
Oh, good. That's good. Yeah, try to do it in small chunks because it is overwhelming. It's a lot to consider and
Yes.
a lot to think about. So I feel like if I give you one topic a month, and then you have a month to work on that topic, and if you
And
guys
we always have the website to go back to.
the website, you have my phone number.
Mhm. I don't think I had that, but I have.
I think you do, Sally. I haven't changed it.
Let me take a look. No,
Okay.
just kidding.
Go ahead. Go ahead and text me. You have it.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, I would just like to add, maybe Gary can agree with this or not, that just coming from a medical background, whenever you have an emergency or a situation, there's a difference between chaos, which you've mentioned, and controlled chaos. And the issue is that it's like you want to control the chaos.
Right.
And that's that's the goal. If there's something that's happening in the church,
Yeah.
from a safety or perspective, it's like there's going to be chaos, but you have to control it.
Right.
And that's the goal, is to control it, because and that comes, and sadly, as I learned, it comes from the leadership,
Yeah.
because sadly the phrase was always used as like the fish rots from the head.
Right.
So unless us as safety can control that, then it's not going to work. Then
Yeah,
and then,
that's why we start-
we're not going to be effective, and then heaven forbid something really horrible is going to happen.
Yeah, and that's why we start the conversations with staff.
Yeah, it's like that's
Let's
why
start the
you
conversation
learn,
with
you
staff.
train, you learn, you train, you
Yeah.
retrain, you retrain, you relearn, you relearn. And just
Yeah.
like Gary said, it's like every time we hear it, we pick up other little jewels, other pearls.
Yeah.
And I
And
was
that's the blessing.
Well, good.
I also think that the more times we hear this,
Yes.
the more normal the conversation becomes.
Yes.
Because,
Good
oh,
point.
look, and we talk about normalizing the conversation. So, I mean, I've done this for years and years and years. So it's very common, very normal for me. when I walk into my granddaughter's school, the first thing I'm concerned about is her safety.
Yeah.
Because this, I've done this for many years.
Yeah, and
So
we want to give people tools that they do use in their everyday life.
correct,
Like
exactly.
that one thing called Pulse Point. Pulse Point is not my app. I'm not getting any money for promoting it. It is a great app, and it tells you wherever there's an AED close by.
Right.
If you're traveling in an airport, or you're in a mall, or you're in a Costco, and you have a medical emergency, somebody suffering a cardiac arrest, and you open up that app, it tells you where the closest AED is. That's like
What's the name of that app again?
Pulse Point.
Post, P-O-S-D?
Pulse.
Oh, Pulse, of
P-U-L-S-E,
course,
Pulse Point.
obvious.
You can just download it, and it'll tell you. The closest AED is 500 feet from you. I mean, whatever. So you want people to use these things in their own life. I've told the story before. I think this group has heard me talk about it. Connie and I were actually in a training. We were teaching some of our guest experience people, and it was like our quarterly big training. And my phone's going off. And I'm like, why is my phone buzzing? I mean, like going crazy. I'm like, I don't know who this is. So I shifted to Connie and the rest of the team, and I went to get my phone, and it was one of our guest experience guys in Istanbul when an explosion happened in the airport.
Yep.
And he said that he knew exactly what to do because of our training. And a kid had got separated from his parents, and he grabbed that kid, him and his wife, and went to do the run, hide, fight, and hid and brought the kid with them. And yeah, because he remembered. Yeah.
That's
So yeah,
Ronnie.
yeah.
Wow.
So it's just and normalizing the conversation here in this space where you guys are the leaders of these initiatives is great. We got to keep trickling it down so that it's normalized for the other volunteers, so that they understand what it is to do. And there's to Mary's point, it's controlled chaos. I've heard it, I've drilled it, I know what to do, right? Yeah.
Would you recommend including in if someone's coming in to be a new member or such, a little brief talk about the safety and security things that are going on at the church, just to let new members maybe know that yeah, this is how we're looking out to protect you and your family.
Yeah,
Or
I would like to see people create. I was in the process of creating this when I rolled off staff. It was just like a little pamphlet. So if you're
yeah,
member class, to include it. If you have new parents checking in kids, here's
yeah,
our safety protocols. Yeah, people feel better.
yeah,
People
and
really
even
are making decisions about where to worship based on whether or not they feel like their kids are safe.
yeah, because I know when new people come into our church, everyone has like a little place where you can stop, and we give them a little pamphlet about our church and stuff. Again, it's not only for a new member class, but also for like a welcoming little brochure, just to
Yeah, if you have a welcoming brochure, I would include it. I would include a safety section.
Okay, thank
Yep.
you.
Yeah.
And people go, oh, look at this. They're all about safety. That's great.
Yeah.
Because
Okay,
again, people are thinking about it, whether they say it or not. They're thinking about it. I mean, Easter's coming. People are thinking about it,
oh,
right?
boy, are we.
And we have one of the videos is one of the videos, I can't think of the title of it off the top of my head, but it's like is it a suspicious package or is it a dangerous package, right? Like somebody's left something in the lobby. Is it that bag, is it suspicious or is it dangerous? Right? We don't know. Yeah. So yeah, people are thinking about it.
Okay.
Anybody got anything else? We're almost up on 8 o'clock, so I want to honor our time. Any more questions, concerns, challenges? You guys feel ready for Easter?
Yeah.
I don't know
know,
about
Hope so. Hope personally or church wise.
the church.
We're praying.
one thing that you might want to think about is if you're having a meeting for all your volunteers before the Easter services, you might want to pull one of the safety moment videos. There's some on there about not being distracted. Don't let somebody come up and distract you. And Easter, you've got visitors, you've got the excitement of, the relevance of the day. Don't let, so you might want to just pull one of those videos, start the conversation about safety procedures, start the conversation to normalize it as you
Have you
continue
guys
to.
seen where those videos are on our website?
Where are they?
All right, hold on a minute.
They're on the
I'm gonna
I
try.
can look through the website. I can do it. I can do
Yeah.
my own investigation. It's fine.
So,
You don't have to do
Go to the member section.
Okay.
yeah. Yeah.
There's just videos in there. There's one about parking lot safety. There's one,
Right.
they're all 60 to 90 seconds long. And here's the beauty of it. If you have a huddle, you can show it in the huddle. If you don't
Right.
have a huddle, you can email it to volunteers. Thanks for volunteering this weekend. Here's something to watch before the weekend. And just attach it. So we're gonna add more to the library, but they're free. Just go attach the videos and send them to people.
Great.
Yep. All right. Anything else? No. All right. Let me say a prayer. We're gonna get out of here. Lord, first, I just want to thank you for tonight, and thank you for these folks who are stewarding the safety in their organizations. I ask you to bless them and to give them focus and help volunteers and staff lean in and be on board with the plans that they are making to protect your bride. I want to thank you that I get the opportunity to do this. It is where my heart is, and I'm grateful for the opportunity to serve you in this way. I want to pray for all of us as we enter into Holy Week and as we enter into Easter, that you protect churches all around the world and give us safe spaces to worship and to celebrate. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen. Thank you.
You're welcome. Have a good night.
You too.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.